My parents sued me over my $2 million beach villa, claiming it should go to my sister instead. I stood in the courtroom, watching my mother dab fake tears while my father's lawyer argued that as the eldest daughter, I had a moral obligation to share my success with Vanessa, who was still finding her path. My sister sat between them, scrolling through her phone, probably posting another gratitude selfie for her 3,000 followers. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, I smiled, opened my briefcase, and pulled out a stack of documents that made my parents' attorney go pale. My name is Maya Elizabeth Sterling. I'm 32 years old, and I'm a senior architect at one of Raleigh's most prestigious firms. The beach house they were trying to steal from me wasn't a gift, an inheritance, or a lucky break. I bought it 3 years ago with money I saved from 7 years of 80-hour work weeks, living in a cramped studio apartment and eating meal-prepped chicken and rice while my parents funded Vanessa's artist journey through Europe. Every square foot of that 4-bedroom oceanfront property in Outer Banks represented sacrifices my family never acknowledged and achievements they consistently dismissed as just architecture. The courtroom felt suffocating despite the air conditioning, the recycled air thick with my parents' entitlement and my sister's practiced victimhood. My mother kept glancing at the gallery where several of her country club friends sat, maintaining her performance of the wounded matriarch. My father's jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscles jumping beneath his skin, that same expression he wore when I chose architecture school over the sensible business degree he demanded. But what really twisted the knife was Vanessa's expression, or lack thereof. She looked bored, entitled, like this courthouse was just another inconvenient stop before her next brunch reservation. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. Growing up in Charlotte, I learned early that love in the Sterling household was conditional and unevenly distributed. Vanessa arrived when I was 4 years old, and from that moment, the family dynamic shifted irrevocably. Where I was expected to maintain straight A's, participate in approved extracurriculars, and follow a predetermined path toward financial stability, Vanessa was encouraged to explore her creativity and find her authentic self. My parents attended every single one of her middle school art shows, even when she literally glued macaroni to construction paper and called it avant-garde. Meanwhile, they missed my high school graduation because they were driving Vanessa to a pottery workshop 3 hours away. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When I was 16 and won a statewide architecture competition, my father's response was to ask if the prize money would cover my college application fees, because he wasn't paying for me to doodle buildings for a living. When Vanessa was 16 and failed her driver's test for the 3rd time, they bought her a brand new Audi to practice with. I worked 3 part-time jobs throughout high school, graduated with a 4.0 GPA, and earned a full academic scholarship to NC State's architecture program. Vanessa barely graduated, took a gap year that turned into 3, and my parents funded her entire extended adolescence without complaint. College intensified the disparity. While I juggled coursework, internships, and my jobs, Vanessa bounced between community college classes she never completed, a series of short-lived passion projects, and an Instagram account where she posted photos of herself looking pensively at sunsets. My parents sent her $800 monthly for living expenses, while I survived on ramen and student loans. When I graduated summa cum laude and landed my position at Anderson & Associates, my mother's comment was, "Well, at least you'll be able to support yourself now." When Vanessa posted her first sponsored Instagram story for a local coffee shop, they threw her a party and invited everyone they knew. The beach house purchase 3 years ago was my line in the sand. After 7 years at the firm, I had been promoted to senior architect, survived the pandemic housing market chaos, and managed to save $120,000 for a down payment. I sold the modest condo I had scrimped to buy at 25, adding another $80,000 to my funds. The villa in Outer Banks had been on the market for months. The sellers motivated after their divorce. I negotiated hard, used every bit of market knowledge I had gained through my commercial real estate projects, and closed at $1,800,000, already appreciating to $2 million within 18 months. I told my parents about the purchase after closing, not before, because I knew they would find some way to insert Vanessa into the equation. I was right. The moment my mother saw photos of the 4-bedroom oceanfront property with its wraparound deck and unobstructed Atlantic views, her first question was, "Does Vanessa get a key?" Not congratulations, not acknowledgement of the achievement. Just an immediate assumption that my success should be shared with the daughter who had never worked a full-time job in her life. My father was more direct. During Sunday dinner the week after I moved in my furniture, he laid out his expectations like a business proposal. Vanessa needed a place to focus on her content creation, somewhere inspiring where she could really grow her brand. The beach house would be perfect for her. I could visit on weekends, of course, but Vanessa would be the primary resident. When I refused, actually laughed at the audacity of the suggestion, my father's face went from negotiation mode to barely controlled fury. He told me I was selfish. That family meant sharing resources, that my success was partially due to the stable foundation they provided. I reminded him of that stable foundation. The foundation where they paid for none of my education, none of my living expenses past age 18, none of my professional development. The foundation where I worked 40 hours a week while carrying 18 credit hours. The foundation where I chose between textbooks and groceries regularly. The foundation where they missed my college graduation because Vanessa needed help moving into her third apartment that year. My mother started crying, her go-to manipulation tactic. My father called me ungrateful. Vanessa just stared at her phone, clearly uncomfortable that her parasitic lifestyle was being examined so directly. The campaign intensified over the following months. Group texts suggesting family time at my beach house, which actually meant Vanessa wanting to throw parties for her influencer friends. My mother showing up at my Raleigh office unannounced to discuss fairness and sharing blessings. My father attempting to give Vanessa a key he didn't have, assuming I would just accept the violation. I changed my locks, installed a security system, and stopped attending family functions. The silence lasted 3 months before they escalated to lawyers. The lawsuit arrived via certified mail on a Tuesday morning. My parents were suing for unjust enrichment, claiming they had provided substantial financial and emotional support throughout my life that entitled them to partial ownership of my property. Their attorney was Marcus Webb, a country club buddy of my father's, who specialized in estate planning and apparently had minimal understanding of property law. The documents were laughably bad, filled with vague allegations and emotional appeals that would never survive a motion to dismiss. But the intent was clear: harass me into compliance, make the legal process so expensive and exhausting that I would settle by giving Vanessa access to my home. They underestimated 2 crucial factors. First, as a senior architect who had worked on dozens of commercial real estate deals, I understood property law better than their cut-rate attorney. Second, I had been documenting their favoritism and my financial independence for over a decade, not because I anticipated this exact scenario, but because I learned early to protect myself with evidence. Every rejected request for college help, every missed event, every dollar they gave Vanessa while giving me nothing, I had recorded meticulously. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. My attorney, Jennifer Rao, was a property litigation specialist I had worked with on firm projects. She took one look at the Sterling lawsuit and smiled in a way that made me glad she was on my side. "This is going to be fun," she said, already drafting our response. "They've essentially admitted in their complaint that they provided you with nothing while funding your sister's lifestyle. Every argument they make helps our case." We filed a motion to dismiss with prejudice and a counterclaim for legal fees, harassment, and attempted fraud. The discovery process was brutal for my parents. Jennifer subpoenaed their financial records, showing the exact amounts given to Vanessa over the years, $170,000 in direct payments since she turned 18, not including the car, the travel, the rent. We subpoenaed my student loan records, my bank statements showing 0 parental deposits, my scholarship letters. We compiled email chains where they praised Vanessa's authenticity while criticizing my corporate sellout career. We gathered statements from extended family members who confirmed the disparate treatment. Every piece of evidence painted the same picture. I earned everything myself. They gave me nothing, and now they wanted to steal my success. Vanessa's Instagram became unexpected ammunition. Jennifer went through 5 years of posts, finding dozens where my sister complained about not getting what she deserved, implied that life was unfair, and suggested that others owed her success. One particularly damning post from 8 months ago showed Vanessa in front of my beach house during a visit captioned, "Some people get everything handed to them while the rest of us struggle." The comment section was full of her followers agreeing, sympathizing, validating her victimhood. Jennifer printed every single post in color for the judge. The mediation attempt was predictably useless. My parents arrived with Marcus Webb, who looked like he had aged 10 years in the 3 months since filing. Jennifer laid out our evidence, our counterclaims, and the very real possibility that the judge would rule their lawsuit frivolous and award us substantial penalties. My father called the evidence taken out of context. My mother cried that I was destroying the family over a house. Vanessa finally looked up from her phone to call me actually insane for keeping such detailed records. I smiled, said nothing, and walked out of the mediation room. We were going to trial. The trial date arrived on a humid June morning, Outer Banks peak season, which meant my beach house was currently worth even more than the $2 million they were fighting over. I drove from Raleigh feeling strangely calm, the kind of calm that comes from knowing you hold every winning card. Jennifer met me outside the courthouse, her expression confident. "They're going to try to make this emotional," she warned. "Your mother will cry. Your father will play the disappointed parent. Vanessa will probably say you traumatized her. Ignore all of it. The law is clear. The evidence is overwhelming. Just answer questions honestly and let me handle the rest." Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and formal. My parents sat at the plaintiff's table, both dressed conservatively, playing the role of concerned parents. Vanessa wore what she probably thought was court-appropriate, a dress that would have been fine if she wasn't also wearing her usual Instagram makeup and taking selfies while the bailiff wasn't looking. Marcus Webb shuffled papers nervously, clearly aware his case was doomed but contractually obligated to see it through. The judge, Honorable Sandra Martinez, was in her late 50s with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and little patience for frivolous litigation. She read through the case summary with an expression that suggested she already knew this was a waste of her time, but was required to hear it anyway. When Marcus Webb stood to make his opening statement, she cut him off after 3 sentences. "Counselor, does your client have any documentation showing financial contribution to the property in question?" Webb stammered something about moral obligations and family duty. Judge Martinez's expression made clear what she thought of those arguments. Jennifer's opening was precise and devastating. She laid out my complete financial independence, the documented favoritism, the baseless nature of the lawsuit, and our counterclaims. She referenced the evidence methodically, each piece building an unassailable case. My parents' attorney had brought emotion. Jennifer brought receipts. The difference was stark and immediate. I could see several people in the gallery, mostly my mother's friends, shifting uncomfortably as they realized this wasn't the story they had been told. When Marcus Webb called my father to testify, the performance began. Robert Sterling, respected business executive, devoted father, wounded by his daughter's cruelty. He described providing me with a loving home, excellent education opportunities, and guidance throughout my formative years. He conveniently omitted that the loving home came with constant criticism, the education opportunities were funded entirely by my scholarships, and the guidance was mostly pressure to abandon my dreams for his approved career path. When Jennifer cross-examined him, she let him dig his own grave. "Mr. Sterling, did you contribute financially to your daughter Maya's college education? We provided a stable home environment that allowed her to focus on her studies. That's not what I asked. Did you provide any monetary contribution to her tuition, housing, or expenses?" A pause. "We felt it was important for Maya to learn financial responsibility. So that's a no? We had other obligations, such as funding your younger daughter Vanessa's lifestyle. Vanessa had different needs." Jennifer pulled out the bank records. "According to these documents, you provided Vanessa with over $170,000 between her 18th and 28th birthdays. How much did you provide Maya during the same period?" My father's jaw clenched. "Maya had scholarships. She didn't need our help. Or you chose not to help her while extensively funding her sister. That's a mischaracterization, is it? Let's look at specific examples." Jennifer spent 20 minutes methodically destroying my father's credibility. Every claim of parental support was contradicted by evidence. Every suggestion of equal treatment was exposed by bank statements. Every attempt to paint me as ungrateful was countered by examples of their preferential treatment of Vanessa. By the time Jennifer finished, my father looked smaller, his executive confidence replaced by exposed hypocrisy. My mother's testimony was predictably emotional. Patricia Sterling, former professor, loving mother, heartbroken by her daughter's selfishness. She cried about family bonds, shared success, and the pain of being cut off from my life. She described Vanessa as sensitive and artistic, needing more support than her naturally driven older sister. She painted a picture of 2 daughters, one blessed with talent and ambition, the other struggling to find her way, and implied that my success created an obligation to help the less fortunate sibling. Jennifer let her finish before beginning cross-examination. "Mrs. Sterling, you testified that Maya was naturally driven and talented. Did you celebrate those qualities?" "Of course. We were always proud of her." "Did you attend her high school graduation?" A hesitation. We had a conflict that day." "What conflict?" "Vanessa had a pottery workshop." "A pottery workshop was more important than your daughter's high school graduation?" It wasn't about importance. It was about supporting both girls. Did Maya ever express how she felt about you missing her graduation? She understood. Maya always understood. Did she have a choice? Jennifer produced emails, texts, and recorded conversations where my mother prioritized Vanessa repeatedly, consistently, without apparent awareness of the impact. She showed attendance records for school events. 100% for Vanessa. Less than 30% for me. She demonstrated financial support patterns. Lavish for one daughter, non-existent for the other. She revealed the architecture of favoritism so clearly that even my mother's friends in the gallery looked uncomfortable. Vanessa's testimony was the most painful, not because she was effective, but because her entitlement was so pure and unexamined. She genuinely believed she deserved access to my property because life had been harder for her. She described growing up in my shadow, feeling pressure to match my achievements, struggling with expectations she couldn't meet. She conveniently ignored that those expectations were self-imposed, that our parents had never demanded anything from her, that her struggles stemmed from refusing to work consistently at anything. When Jennifer asked her about employment history, Vanessa described herself as a content creator and lifestyle brand. When Jennifer asked about income, Vanessa admitted averaging less than $2,000 monthly, mostly from our parents. When Jennifer asked why she felt entitled to my property, Vanessa said, "Because family should share, and Maya has always had everything easy." The statement was so delusional that several people in the gallery audibly scoffed. My testimony was straightforward. Jennifer asked about my education, my career, my purchase of the beach house. I answered factually, without emotion, letting the evidence speak. Marcus Webb's cross-examination was weak, mostly attempts to make me admit I harbored resentment toward my family. I didn't deny it. "I resent being treated as less valuable than my sister for my entire life," I said clearly. "I resent working for everything while she was given everything. I resent that instead of celebrating my success, my parents decided to try to steal it. Yes, I'm resentful, but that doesn't change the fact that this property is legally mine, earned through my work, and they have absolutely no claim to it." The closing arguments were anticlimactic. Marcus Webb made emotional appeals about family and fairness that had no legal foundation. Jennifer methodically summarized the evidence, the law, and the frivolous nature of the lawsuit. Judge Martinez took 15 minutes to review her notes before rendering a verdict from the bench, rather than taking time for a written opinion. That alone told me everything. "This case is without merit," Judge Martinez began, her voice carrying the weight of judicial frustration. "The evidence overwhelmingly shows that defendant Maya Sterling purchased the property in question with her own funds, maintains sole ownership, and has no legal or moral obligation to share that property with her family. The plaintiff's claims of unjust enrichment are baseless and appear to be an attempt to use the courts to enforce familial pressure rather than legitimate legal grievances," she continued, and her words made my mother start crying again, though this time not theatrically. Furthermore, the evidence of disparate treatment between the plaintiff's daughters is concerning. While parents have no legal obligation to treat children identically, using the courts to retroactively claim entitlement to a successful child's assets after providing that child with substantially less support is inappropriate. This lawsuit appears to be harassment disguised as litigation. Judge Martinez looked directly at my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, your daughter earned her success despite, not because of, your support. This court finds in favor of the defendant on all counts and awards Maya Sterling her attorney's fees and costs." She paused, and what she said next made Marcus Webb close his eyes. "Additionally, given the frivolous nature of this action and the clear intent to harass, this court is sanctioning the plaintiffs and their attorney $5,000, payable to the defendant." The gavel fell, and it was over. My parents sat stunned. Vanessa finally looked up from her phone, confusion replacing her bored expression. Marcus Webb gathered his papers quickly, clearly wanting to escape before Judge Martinez decided to add more sanctions. I felt Jennifer squeeze my shoulder. Professional victory mixed with genuine satisfaction. We had won completely, legally, publicly, but I wasn't done. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. The case had gained local attention, partly because of the novelty, a family suing their successful daughter to claim her property, partly because someone had leaked Vanessa's Instagram posts about deserving better. I had given one reporter exclusive access to the trial transcripts. Now the story was going regional, possibly national. My parents' reputation in their Charlotte social circle was about to become very complicated. Jennifer handled the brief press statement, professional, and concise. Ms. Sterling's right to property she purchased with her own funds has been affirmed. The court found the lawsuit without merit and sanctioned the plaintiffs for frivolous litigation. Ms. Sterling hopes her family can now respect boundaries and her autonomy. I stood beside her, saying nothing, letting my calm presence convey everything necessary. No tears, no anger, just quiet victory. My parents tried to approach me as I walked to my car. My father started with, "Maya, we need to talk," his executive voice trying to regain control. I stopped, turned, and looked at him with an expression I had perfected during difficult client negotiations. "No, we don't. The court has spoken. My attorneys will be in touch about collecting the fees and sanctions. Do not contact me directly again." My mother reached for my arm. I stepped back. "I'm not interested in reconciliation. You sued me. You lost. That's the end of our relationship." Vanessa was crying now, real tears instead of her usual practiced variety, finally understanding that actions have consequences. "Maya, I didn't think they would actually sue you. I just said it wasn't fair that you had a beach house and I didn't have anything." I looked at my younger sister, 28 years old, never held a job longer than 3 months, living off our parents' money, and felt nothing but contempt. "You have exactly what you earned, Vanessa. Nothing. I have what I earned. Everything. That's actually perfectly fair." The weeks following the trial brought consequences my parents hadn't anticipated. The local Charlotte newspaper ran a detailed story about the case, focusing on the documented favoritism and frivolous lawsuit. My mother's country club friends, the same women who sat in the courtroom expecting to witness my humiliation, instead became sources of gossip about Patricia Sterling's parenting failures. Several of them had successful daughters who immediately identified with my situation, and my mother found herself suddenly uninvited from her regular lunch group. My father's business reputation took an unexpected hit when one of his former colleagues shared the article in a professional network, commenting on the ethics of suing your own child for property they legitimately purchased. Robert Sterling had spent 40 years building a reputation as a shrewd but fair executive, and watching him try to legally steal from his daughter shattered that image. 3 nonprofit boards quietly asked him to step down, not wanting the association with someone who would weaponize the courts against family. Vanessa's Instagram following actually grew initially, people drawn to the drama, but her attempt to play victim backfired spectacularly. She posted a lengthy story about being caught in the middle of family conflict and how some people prioritize money over relationships. Her followers, now aware of the full context, flooded the comments with questions about the $170,000 she had received while I got nothing. When she deleted the post and disabled comments, screenshots had already spread across multiple platforms. Jennifer collected the attorney's fees without issue, $38,000 that my parents paid within the required 30 days. The $5,000 sanction took longer, requiring Jennifer to file a motion to compel payment. My parents' attorney, Marcus Webb, paid his portion immediately, desperate to distance himself from the disaster. My parents dragged their feet until Judge Martinez threatened contempt charges, then paid in a cashier's check delivered by courier, unable to face the humiliation of handing it over personally. I returned to my normal life with surprising ease, the trial more validation than trauma. Work at Anderson & Associates continued with new energy, my successful defense of my property earning respect from partners who appreciated someone who didn't roll over under pressure. I was assigned lead architect on a $15 million mixed-use development in Durham, the kind of high-profile project that would have been years away without my demonstrated competence under pressure. The beach house became my sanctuary in a new way. No longer just an achievement, but a symbol of independence fully defended. I spent weekends there alone, working on design projects from the deck, swimming in the Atlantic, existing in a space that was completely, legally, irrevocably mine. I changed nothing about the security system or access protocols. My parents and sister were already locked out literally and figuratively. My extended family took sides predictably. My father's brother called to say I had destroyed family unity over just a house, apparently forgetting it was my parents who filed the lawsuit. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia from Seattle, sent a care package and a note saying she had watched my mother favor Vanessa for years and was proud I finally stood up for myself. Cousins I barely knew sent Facebook friend requests, some supportive, others clearly just wanting gossip access. 3 months after the trial, I received an email from Vanessa's address with the subject line, "Can we talk?" I deleted it without opening. 2 weeks later, a handwritten letter arrived at my office, my mother's distinctive cursive on expensive stationery. "Maya, this has gone on long enough. Family is more important than pride. Your father and I are willing to forgive if you'll just apologize for the embarrassment and consider letting Vanessa stay at the beach house occasionally. She's struggling and you have so much. I photographed the letter, sent it to Jennifer for the legal file, and fed the original through my office shredder. My father tried a different approach, showing up at one of my project sites in Durham unannounced. I was conducting a walkthrough with the developer and general contractor when Robert Sterling appeared, trying to use the public setting to force a conversation. Maya, I need 5 minutes. This is important. I looked at him the way I looked at contractors who tried to cut corners. Professional ice. You're trespassing on a construction site without authorization. Leave now, or I'll call security. The developer, who had read about the lawsuit, personally escorted my father off the property. What my parents didn't know was that I had begun documenting everything for a potential restraining order. Every unwanted contact, every manipulation attempt, every boundary violation went into a file with Jennifer. We weren't there yet, but the groundwork was laid if they escalated. Jennifer advised that judges were generally sympathetic to adult children trying to establish independence from controlling parents, especially with our trial victory establishing a pattern of behavior. Vanessa's situation deteriorated in ways that would have made me feel guilty before the lawsuit, but now just felt like natural consequences. Her Instagram engagement dropped as followers realized she had no actual content beyond complaining and posting sponsored products she received free. 2 brands dropped her after discovering her true follower count versus engagement ratio, bots and fake accounts artificially inflating her numbers. She moved back in with our parents after her roommate situation fell apart, claiming it was temporary. My mother's attempts to restore her social standing became increasingly desperate. She volunteered for every charity committee, hosted elaborate dinner parties, and told anyone who would listen a revised version of events where I had misunderstood their intentions and overreacted with legal action. The problem was too many people had read the actual trial transcripts now available as public record. Her revisionist history convinced no one who mattered. I celebrated my 33rd birthday in September at the beach house, inviting colleagues from work and friends I had made independent of family. 20 people filled the deck, drinking wine and watching the sunset, no one present sharing my DNA. Jennifer came, having become a genuine friend beyond our attorney-client relationship. She gave a toast that made everyone laugh. To Maya, who proved that the best revenge is living well, and the second best revenge is excellent documentation. During the party, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I hope you're not spending it alone. Family should be together on important days. I showed the message to Jennifer, who photographed it for the file. Then I blocked my mother's number. I had spent too many birthdays watching my parents fawn over Vanessa, while treating my achievements as expected obligations. Spending this one surrounded by people who actually valued me felt like the real gift. October brought an unexpected development when I received a LinkedIn message from a journalist writing a book about family estrangement and adult children who cut off toxic parents. She had followed my case and wanted to interview me for a chapter on financial abuse and favoritism. I agreed, seeing an opportunity to tell my story in a context that might help others recognize similar patterns in their own families. The interview took place over video call. 2 hours of detailed questions about my childhood, the documented favoritism, and the lawsuit. The journalist, Dr. Rebecca Morrison, specialized in family psychology and had interviewed hundreds of estranged adults. Your case is textbook, she explained. Parents who overfunction for one child while underfunctioning for another, then express shock when the neglected child establishes boundaries. The lawsuit is just an extreme example of their inability to accept that you're not obligated to compensate for their parenting failures. Dr. Morrison asked about my emotional state, clearly expecting trauma or ongoing pain. I surprised her with my honesty. I grieved the family I should have had years ago. The trial just formalized what was already true. They don't love me the way parents should love a child. They love the idea of controlling me, of taking credit for my success while providing none of the support. Accepting that freed me. She paused her recording. That's remarkably healthy, she said. Most people I interview are still seeking their parents' approval on some level. You genuinely don't care anymore. I smiled. I stopped caring when they sued me. You can't hurt someone emotionally once they fully understand you're incapable of loving them properly. The article published in November, part of a series on family estrangement in a major national magazine. My case was featured prominently. With permission, I used only my first name, but anyone in Charlotte who knew the story would recognize the details. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from readers sharing similar experiences, thanking me for speaking openly, describing their own golden child siblings and scapegoat childhoods. My parents saw the article. I know because my father sent an email to my work address, his only remaining contact method, calling the article a betrayal of family privacy and threatening to sue the magazine for defamation. Jennifer responded on my behalf, noting that everything in the article was documented fact from public court records, and any lawsuit would result in additional sanctions for frivolous litigation. We never heard from their attorney again. Vanessa's response was more public and more stupid. She posted on Instagram claiming the article was full of lies and that she was the real victim of Maya's narcissistic need for attention. She included a selfie of herself crying, which her remaining followers immediately called out as obviously staged, makeup perfect, lighting professional. The post stayed up for 3 hours before she deleted it, but screenshots lived forever. Her follower count dropped by another 1,000. December brought the holidays, traditionally the worst time of year for family conflict. My phone filled with messages from extended relatives asking about my plans, many fishing for gossip about whether I would attend family gatherings. I made my position clear. I would not be attending any event where my parents or sister were present, and anyone uncomfortable with that was welcome to celebrate without me. Aunt Patricia invited me to Seattle for Christmas, genuinely wanting my company, not drama. I accepted. The week before Christmas, a process server arrived at my office with new legal documents. For a moment, I thought my parents had been stupid enough to file another lawsuit, but the papers were actually a petition from Vanessa, requesting to be added as a co-owner of the beach house based on verbal promises I had allegedly made. Jennifer took one look and laughed so hard she had to sit down. She filed this pro se, Jennifer explained, meaning without an attorney. She doesn't understand property law, contract law, or apparently the concept of learning from mistakes. This will be dismissed immediately, and she might face sanctions of her own. We filed a motion to dismiss with prejudice and a motion for sanctions for filing a frivolous claim. We also filed for a restraining order, arguing that the repeated legal harassment constituted stalking. The hearing was scheduled for January, meaning my Christmas in Seattle would be peaceful, but the new year would start with another courtroom confrontation. I wasn't worried. I was prepared. And this time, Vanessa would face a judge without our parents' attorney to guide her, just her own entitled delusion against documented reality. The hearing for Vanessa's property claim took place on a freezing January morning, the kind of cold that made walking from the parking garage to the courthouse actively painful. I arrived with Jennifer, both of us carrying briefcases filled with evidence we probably wouldn't need. Vanessa's petition was so poorly constructed that the judge would likely dismiss it in minutes. What we didn't expect was the crowd. Vanessa had apparently decided that if she was going to lose, she would make it performative. She stood on the courthouse steps with her phone mounted on a small tripod, recording herself talking about fighting for justice against family betrayal. A handful of her remaining followers had actually shown up, mostly young women who seemed to think this was some kind of influencer event rather than a legal proceeding. Security had to clear the steps to allow normal court business to continue. Inside, Vanessa sat alone at the plaintiff's table, dressed in what she clearly thought made her look professional, but actually looked like she was attending a funeral in a clothing store's clearance section. She had printed her petition from a template she found online, the formatting inconsistent and the legal arguments nonsensical. She kept glancing at the gallery where her small group of supporters sat, playing to her audience even in a courtroom. Judge Martinez, assigned to the case because of its relationship to the previous lawsuit, looked at Vanessa's petition with barely concealed contempt. "Ms. Sterling, do you have legal representation?" Vanessa straightened in her chair. "I'm representing myself, Your Honor. I can't afford an attorney because my sister has all the family money." Judge Martinez's expression suggested she was already regretting accepting this assignment. "Ms. Sterling, this court does not provide legal advice. You filed a petition to be added as co-owner of property titled solely to your sister. What is your legal basis for this claim?" Vanessa launched into a rambling explanation about fairness, family, and how I had implied she could use the beach house whenever she wanted. So obviously I meant she should own part of it. Judge Martinez interrupted repeatedly, trying to get Vanessa to cite actual legal precedent or contract law. Vanessa had neither, just feelings and entitlement dressed up in legal-sounding words copied from internet forums. Jennifer's response was surgical. She presented the deed showing my sole ownership, the mortgage documents showing my sole financial responsibility, and the complete absence of any written or verbal agreement giving Vanessa any ownership claim. She then presented transcripts from the previous trial, where Vanessa herself admitted having no financial contribution to the property. Your Honor, this petition is factually baseless and legally frivolous. Ms. Vanessa Sterling is attempting to use the courts to obtain through litigation what she cannot obtain through legitimate means, access to property she has no right to. Judge Martinez didn't even need to deliberate. Ms. Sterling, your petition is dismissed with prejudice, meaning you cannot refile it. Property ownership is a matter of legal title and financial contribution, not hurt feelings or perceived unfairness. Your sister owns this property. You do not. This court's time has been wasted on a claim that has no legal merit whatsoever. She paused, and her next words made Vanessa's face go pale. Furthermore, given that you filed this action after your parents' similar claim was defeated and sanctioned, this court finds your petition to be in bad faith and sanctions you $1,000, payable to your sister within 30 days. Vanessa stood up, forgetting courtroom protocol. That's not fair. She has millions and I have nothing. Judge Martinez's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Sit down, Ms. Sterling. Your financial situation is not your sister's responsibility. If you wish to improve your circumstances, I suggest finding employment rather than filing frivolous lawsuits. This hearing is concluded. Outside the courtroom, Vanessa's supporters waited with their phones ready, expecting some kind of vindication moment for their content. Instead, they got their influencer crying genuine tears of frustration and humiliation, ranting about corrupt judges and family betrayal. One supporter tried to comfort her while another filmed everything, apparently not understanding that posting this meltdown would only make Vanessa look worse. Jennifer and I walked past without acknowledging them, letting Vanessa's public breakdown speak for itself. The restraining order hearing followed immediately, a continuation of the same proceeding. Jennifer presented our evidence: the deleted but screenshotted social media posts, the unwanted contact, the repeated boundary violations, and now this second frivolous lawsuit. Your Honor, Ms. Maya Sterling has made clear repeatedly that she wants no contact with her family. They have responded with legal harassment, public social media attacks, and continued unwanted contact. She is requesting a restraining order requiring them to maintain distance and cease all communication. Judge Martinez reviewed the evidence with an expression that suggested she was tired of the Sterling family drama. Ms. Sterling, do you contest any of these allegations? Vanessa, still tearful and angry, made her situation worse. My parents aren't even here. This is just about Maya being vindictive because I filed a petition for what's rightfully mine. Judge Martinez closed the folder. The property is not rightfully yours. This court has now told you that twice. The restraining order is granted. You, your parents Robert and Patricia Sterling, and any associates acting on your behalf are prohibited from contacting Maya Sterling directly or indirectly, from coming within 500 feet of her residence or workplace, and from posting about her on social media. Violations will result in contempt charges and possible jail time. Do you understand? Vanessa understood nothing except her own victimhood, but she nodded anyway. The restraining order was entered into record. Copies served immediately. My parents, who had wisely stayed away from this hearing, would receive their copies by the end of the day. 3 years of building my dream property, 6 months of legal harassment, and now I finally had legal protection from the family that viewed my success as their entitlement. The sanctions and court costs hit Vanessa hard. She didn't have $1,000, having never maintained savings or steady income. She tried to get our parents to pay it, but even they had apparently reached their limit of funding her delusions. She started a GoFundMe asking her followers to help her fight family injustice, which was reported and removed within 24 hours for violating the platform's terms of service against funding legal fees for frivolous claims. Jennifer filed for wage garnishment when Vanessa missed the 30-day payment deadline, but Vanessa had no wages to garnish. We then filed a claim against any potential assets, which amounted to her car, a used Audi our parents had bought her 6 years ago, now worth maybe $8,000. The sheriff's sale was scheduled for March, and while I didn't need the money, I wasn't letting Vanessa escape consequences by claiming poverty. My professional life continued its upward trajectory, insulated from family drama by office walls and colleague support. The Durham Mixed-Use Development Project progressed ahead of schedule. My design earning praise from both the developer and City Planning Commission. I was invited to speak on a panel about sustainable urban architecture at a conference in Boston, my first national speaking engagement. Success, real success earned through skill and work, felt better than any family approval ever could have. I spent February weekends at the beach house, watching winter storms roll across the Atlantic from the safety of my heated living room. The isolation was therapeutic. No unexpected visitors now that the restraining order made contact illegal. No obligation to share my space or success. No family drama penetrating my sanctuary. I started sketching ideas for a small addition, a dedicated office space with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean, another investment in property that was mine alone. My 34th birthday approached in late February, and I planned another celebration at the beach house, bigger than last year's gathering. 40 people confirmed attendance: colleagues, friends, people from my gym, my book club, my professional organizations. Not one family member would be present. And that fact felt like its own gift. I hired a catering company, rented a sound system, planned a weekend of celebration for a life built entirely on my own terms. The week before my birthday, Jennifer called with news that made the celebration even sweeter. The sheriff's sale of Vanessa's car is scheduled for your birthday weekend. I can request a postponement if you want to avoid the timing looking vindictive. I thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. No postponement, let it proceed as scheduled. If she had paid the sanctions on time, this wouldn't be happening. Natural consequences aren't vindictive, they're just consequences. The sale happened Saturday morning while I was at the beach house preparing for my party that evening. Jennifer attended as my representative, watching as Vanessa's Audi sold for $7,500, enough to cover the sanctions, court costs, and Jennifer's fees for the collection process. Vanessa showed up crying, begging the deputy to stop the sale, claiming she needed the car for work, which was laughable given she had no job. The deputy informed her that transportation needs didn't override court-ordered debt collection, and the sale proceeded. Vanessa posted one final Instagram rant that evening, filmed from what appeared to be a bus stop, tearfully explaining how her cruel sister had stolen her car on her birthday weekend over a tiny court fee. The post violated the restraining order's prohibition on posting about me on social media, which several of my friends immediately reported. Jennifer filed a motion for contempt, and Vanessa spent the next week frantically deleting the post and all related comments, but the screenshots existed forever, documenting her violation. My birthday party was perfect. Friends filled the beach house, music played on the deck, catered food exceeded expectations, and I stood watching the sunset over the Atlantic, feeling completely, genuinely happy. Jennifer gave another toast, this one about the importance of protecting your peace and letting go of people who refuse to respect your boundaries. Several guests who knew my story raised their glasses higher, understanding the specific victory being celebrated. The contempt hearing for Vanessa's restraining order violation was scheduled for mid-March, another court appearance, another opportunity for my sister to demonstrate her inability to accept consequences. Jennifer advised that judges took restraining order violations seriously, especially when documented through social media posts that were reported by multiple people. She could face jail time, Jennifer explained. Probably just a few days, enough to scare her, but it's possible. I should have felt guilty about the possibility of my sister going to jail. I didn't. Vanessa had been given every advantage, every opportunity, every dollar she needed to build a life. She chose instead to focus on what I had, to demand access to my success, to weaponize our parents' favoritism into legal harassment. She had violated a court order because she couldn't resist playing victim on social media. Whatever happened now was entirely her own doing. The contempt hearing brought a smaller crowd. Just me, Jennifer, Vanessa, and a court-appointed attorney trying to mitigate the damage his client had done to herself. Judge Martinez reviewed the Instagram post, the screenshots, the timestamps proving it was posted after the restraining order was in effect. Ms. Sterling, you were explicitly told not to post about your sister on social media. You did so anyway. Explain your reasoning. Vanessa's attorney tried to argue she didn't understand the order's scope, that she thought it only applied to direct contact, that she was emotional and not thinking clearly. Judge Martinez cut through the excuses. The order was written in clear language. Ms. Sterling is an adult capable of reading and understanding court documents. This is a willful violation. She sentenced Vanessa to 5 days in county jail, suspended pending 6 months of good behavior, meaning if Vanessa violated the order again, she would serve the time. She also added another $500 fine and extended the restraining order's duration by another year. Vanessa left the courtroom looking stunned, finally understanding that judges don't care about your feelings or social media following, they care about following court orders. Her attorney looked relieved his client hadn't been immediately jailed, clearly aware that arguing further might change Judge Martinez's mind. I left feeling the satisfaction of boundaries enforced and consequences delivered, not by my actions, but by the legal system simply doing its job. March brought spring weather and renewed energy for my work projects. The Durham development broke ground with a ceremony I attended, photos of me in a hard hat holding a shovel appearing in the local business journal. My parents saw the article, I knew, because a mutual acquaintance mentioned that my mother had commented bitterly about my success at a charity event, but they couldn't contact me to express their opinions. The restraining order ensured their bitterness remained their own problem. The Beach House office addition began construction in April. A local contractor I had vetted thoroughly handling the work. I spent weekends watching the project take shape, the glass walls and custom desk space exactly as I had designed. The addition would increase the property value by at least $100,000, another investment in my sanctuary, another improvement my family had no claim to. The contempt hearing aftermath brought unexpected developments. Vanessa's court-appointed attorney apparently had a come-to-Jesus conversation with his client about the reality of her legal situation, because in late April I received a formal letter through Jennifer's office. Vanessa was requesting permission to apologize in writing, through attorneys only, in hopes of avoiding future violations and potential jail time. Jennifer's advice was clear. You have zero obligation to accept or respond to any apology, but if you do allow it, make sure it goes through me, and make sure it's documented as not constituting contact that violates the restraining order. I agreed to receive the letter, curiosity overcoming my general policy of ignoring my family's attempts at communication. What arrived was 3 handwritten pages of what Vanessa's attorney probably hoped would demonstrate genuine remorse, but mostly revealed her continued inability to accept responsibility. She was sorry that things escalated, sorry that miscommunications led to legal issues, sorry that family conflict became so public. Nowhere did she apologize for filing frivolous lawsuits, violating court orders, or spending 28 years benefiting from parental favoritism while treating me as less valuable. Jennifer filed the letter as evidence of contact attempted through proper legal channels, and I never responded. My parents made their own attempt at reconciliation through Aunt Patricia, who called me in May asking if I would consider meeting with a family therapist they had hired. Your mother is really struggling with the estrangement, Patricia explained gently. She feels like she's lost a daughter. I felt no sympathy. She sued me, Aunt Patricia. She supported Vanessa's lawsuit even after losing their own. She spent my entire life treating me as less important than my sister. She didn't lose a daughter. She revealed she never really had one, just a scapegoat who finally escaped. Patricia sighed, torn between her sister and her niece. I know their behavior has been terrible, Maya. I've told Eleanor that repeatedly. But is there no path back? Does it have to be permanent? I thought about the question seriously before answering. If someone steals from you, you don't give them another key to your house. If someone sues you, you don't invite them to family dinners. If someone shows you for decades that they don't value you equally, you don't keep hoping they'll change. It's not about punishment, Patricia. It's about protection. They can't hurt me if I don't give them access to my life. The conversation ended with Patricia's reluctant acceptance that I wasn't interested in reconciliation, therapy, or any relationship with my parents or sister. She promised to stop carrying messages between us, understanding finally that her role as family bridge was enabling continued violation of boundaries I had established clearly. We made plans for her to visit the beach house in July, just the two of us, the one family relationship worth maintaining. Summer arrived with increased work demands as the Durham project entered its critical construction phase. I spent 3 days a week on site, managing contractor issues and design modifications, the kind of hands-on involvement that separated good architects from great ones. The developer praised my attention to detail and problem-solving ability, hinting at future projects if this one continued successfully. Success building on success, achievement earned through competence, the opposite of Vanessa's expectation that rewards should arrive without effort. June brought an unexpected message from Dr. Rebecca Morrison, the journalist whose article on family estrangement had quoted my case extensively. Her book was being published in September, and she wanted my permission to use more detailed information about my situation, including the subsequent lawsuits and restraining order. Your case has become the most requested story from readers of the original article, she explained. People want to know what happened after you set boundaries, whether your family accepted them or continued pushing. The legal consequences you documented provide a roadmap for others dealing with similar harassment. I agreed, seeing value in showing that setting boundaries sometimes required legal enforcement, that families didn't automatically respect your autonomy just because you demanded it, that consequences were sometimes necessary to protect yourself from people who claim to love you while actively harming you. Dr. Morrison sent me relevant book excerpts for fact-checking, and reading my own story through her psychological analysis was enlightening. She identified patterns I had lived but never named: parentification, scapegoating, triangulation, financial abuse disguised as selective support. The book's publication was scheduled for September, coinciding with National Family Estrangement Awareness Week, a thing I hadn't known existed but made sense given how many people Dr. Morrison said experienced similar situations. She arranged for me to participate in a podcast interview about the book, my voice disguised but my story told fully, another opportunity to help others recognize toxic family dynamics and understand that escape was possible. July arrived with Aunt Patricia's promised visit to the beach house. 4 days of genuine family connection unmarred by the Sterling family dysfunction. We talked honestly about my childhood, and Patricia shared observations I had never heard. How my mother always seemed threatened by my independence, how my father viewed parenting as a business investment he expected returns from, how Vanessa was enabled into helplessness by parents who confused support with actually preparing her for adult life. "Your mother called me after the restraining order," Patricia confided over wine on the deck. "She wanted me to convince you that they only sued because they love you and want what's best for the family. I told her that suing your child isn't love. It's control disguised as concern. We haven't spoken since." I felt guilty that my estrangement had damaged Patricia's relationship with her sister, but she waved off my apology. "Eleanor has been exhausting for 60 years, Maya. You just had the courage to stop pretending dysfunction was normal. I'm proud of you." The Durham project reached substantial completion in August, the exterior finished and interior work progressing rapidly toward the October grand opening. The developer hosted a hard hat tour for investors and local officials, and I presented the design vision and sustainable features to a group that included 2 city council members and the mayor. Photos from the event appeared in the business section, my name and firm prominently featured. I was 34 years old, lead architect on a $15 million project, and absolutely no one in my family could claim credit for my achievement. Dr. Morrison's book released in early September to strong reviews and immediate bestseller status, tapping into a cultural conversation about toxic families and the right to distance yourself from people who harm you. The chapter featuring my case, identified only as Maya S., but detailed enough that anyone who knew the story would recognize it, generated particular interest. Online forums discussing the book filled with comments from people who saw their own families in my story, who felt validated in their decisions to limit or eliminate contact with parents or siblings who refused to respect boundaries. The podcast interview aired mid-September. My voice altered electronically, but my story told in my own words. People assume that cutting off family requires some dramatic abuse, but death by 1,000 cuts is still death, I explained to the host. My parents didn't beat me or abandon me. They just consistently, relentlessly treated me as less valuable than my sister, then tried to steal the success I achieved despite their neglect. That's enough. You don't owe relationship to people who demonstrate through actions that they don't genuinely care about your well-being. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of downloads in the first week, emails to the podcast from listeners sharing their own stories, thanking me for articulating feelings they had struggled to express. Several listeners mentioned they were consulting attorneys about restraining orders against family members. Inspired by my documentation that legal protection was possible, I had become accidentally, reluctantly, a voice for adult children protecting themselves from toxic families. Vanessa apparently heard the podcast. Someone must have sent her the link, because in late September, a letter arrived at Jennifer's office from a different attorney, not court-appointed this time, but apparently paid for somehow. The letter threatened to sue for defamation over the podcast interview, claiming I had damaged Vanessa's reputation by discussing our family situation publicly. Jennifer read it, laughed, and drafted a response explaining that truth is an absolute defense to defamation, that I had never used Vanessa's full name in the interview, and that threatening litigation over protected speech could itself be considered harassment under our existing restraining order. The defamation threat evaporated immediately. Vanessa's new attorney apparently realized his client had no case and significant risk of making her legal situation worse, but the attempt revealed that Vanessa hadn't learned anything from her previous legal defeats, still believed she could use courts to punish me for the crime of succeeding in setting boundaries. Jennifer added the threat to our documentation file, building an increasingly comprehensive record of harassment that would support extending or strengthening the restraining order if necessary. October brought the grand opening of the Durham project, an event covered by local media and attended by several hundred people. I gave a short speech about sustainable urban development and the importance of creating spaces that served communities rather than just developers' bottom lines. The building was beautiful, exactly as I had envisioned, proof that my architectural vision had value beyond my family's dismissal of my career choice as doodling buildings. My parents saw the media coverage. I learned through the grapevine that always exists in Charlotte's interconnected professional circles. My father reportedly commented to someone that he had always known Maya would do well in business, attempting to claim retroactive support for a career he had actively opposed. My mother apparently told people she was so proud but sad that family conflict prevented her from celebrating properly, painting herself as the wounded mother rather than the parent who sued her own daughter. The restraining order extension hearing was scheduled for early November, 1 year after the original order, requiring renewal for continued protection. Jennifer filed the motion along with our comprehensive documentation of continued harassment attempts, Vanessa's Instagram violations, the apology letter that revealed no genuine understanding of her actions, the defamation threat, and several instances of my parents using intermediaries to attempt contact despite the order. They violated the spirit of the restraining order repeatedly, Jennifer explained. The court should extend it for at least another 2 years, possibly permanently. Judge Martinez reviewed our evidence with the same tired frustration she had shown throughout the Sterling family legal saga. Ms. Rao, your client has maintained boundaries, sought legal protection, and consistently been harassed by family members who refuse to accept those boundaries. The pattern is clear. She turned to the respondents section, where my parents sat with Marcus Webb, apparently willing to show up for this hearing since it affected them directly. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, you have used third parties to contact your daughter despite a court order. You have supported your younger daughter's violations and legal actions. Explain why this court should not hold you in contempt. My father stood, trying to reclaim the executive authority that had served him for decades. Your Honor, we're simply parents trying to repair our family. Maya has misrepresented our relationship and made reconciliation impossible through legal barriers. We love our daughter and want the opportunity to rebuild trust. Judge Martinez's expression suggested she had heard similar arguments too many times. Mr. Sterling, you sued your daughter for property she legitimately owned. That's not love. That's attempted theft through legal process. Sit down. My mother tried next, tears ready as always. We made mistakes, Your Honor, but we're her parents. Doesn't that relationship deserve some protection, some opportunity for healing? Judge Martinez looked at her with something close to pity. Mrs. Sterling, the relationship you're describing requires mutual consent. Your daughter has clearly, consistently, and legally established that she does not consent to relationship with you. This court's role is to protect her right to that choice, not to force reconciliation because you've decided you want one. The restraining order was extended for 3 years with strengthened provisions. No third-party contact, no social media monitoring or posting, no attempts to communicate through professional channels, no attendance at public events where my presence was announced in advance. Violations would result in immediate contempt charges and jail time, no suspended sentences, no warnings. My parents left the courtroom looking older somehow, finally understanding that legal consequences were real and their parental status provided no immunity. Vanessa didn't attend the hearing, having learned that her presence in court generally made things worse for her. But that evening, she posted on a private Facebook account, not realizing that several of her friends were also connected to people who knew me. The post called Judge Martinez biased, called me vindictive, and suggested she was considering taking her story public to expose judicial corruption. Screenshots reached Jennifer within an hour, and we filed for contempt the next morning. The contempt hearing happened fast, Judge Martinez clearly tired of Vanessa's repeated violations. The evidence was straightforward. Vanessa had posted about me on social media after being explicitly ordered not to. Not just once, but now 3 times. Her attorney, the same court-appointed counsel from before, looked defeated before proceedings even began. Your Honor, my client struggles with impulse control and social media addiction. She needs counseling, not incarceration. Judge Martinez was unmoved. Your client needs to follow court orders, counselor. Ms. Sterling, you were given a suspended sentence last time with explicit warning that further violations would result in jail time. You violated anyway. This court sentences you to 5 days in county jail, sentence to begin immediately, and extends your restraining order to 5 years. If you violate again, the sentence will be 30 days. Do you understand? Vanessa, finally grasping that consequences were real, started crying. The bailiff led her away, and I felt absolutely nothing except satisfaction that boundaries were being enforced. My parents tried to blame me for Vanessa's incarceration, sending a letter through their attorney claiming I was destroying their daughter over petty grudges. Jennifer responded with a detailed timeline showing that every legal consequence Vanessa faced resulted from her own actions, her own lawsuits, Her own violations. Your daughter is an adult responsible for her own choices. Ms. Maya Sterling has simply protected herself through appropriate legal channels. Your continued attempts to assign blame to the victim of your family's harassment are noted and documented. Thanksgiving approached with no family obligations for the first time in my adult life. I volunteered to work at a community kitchen serving holiday meals, finding more genuine connection with strangers grateful for warm food than I had ever felt at my parents' elaborate holiday dinners. Colleagues invited me to their family celebrations, and I attended 2 different Thanksgiving events, welcomed into other people's families with warmth my own had never provided. December brought Dr. Morrison's invitation to speak at a conference on family estrangement and recovery in San Francisco. I accepted, taking vacation time to fly across the country and share my experience with therapists, social workers, and other professionals who worked with estranged adults. My presentation focused on the legal aspects, how documentation protected me, how courts could enforce boundaries when families refused to respect them, how restraining orders weren't dramatic overreactions, but sometimes necessary tools for self-protection. The audience response was overwhelming. A standing ovation, requests for copies of my documentation templates, therapists asking permission to share my story with clients who felt guilty about setting boundaries. One woman approached me afterward, tears streaming down her face, and said, "My parents sued me for grandparent visitation rights to force me to give them access to my children. I thought I was alone in having family weaponize the legal system. Thank you for showing me I'm not crazy for protecting myself." I returned from San Francisco energized. My experience validated by professionals who understood family dynamics and trauma. The Beach House Office Edition was complete, the space perfect for working remotely or sketching personal projects. I spent Christmas week there alone, watching winter storms over the Atlantic, reading, designing a theoretical project just for myself, a small sustainable cottage that existed only in my imagination. The solitude felt like luxury. No performances, no walking on eggshells, no managing other people's emotions, just peace. The new year arrived with professional opportunities multiplying. The Durham project's success led to inquiries from developers in 3 other cities, all wanting the architect who had delivered excellent work on time and on budget. I was promoted to junior partner at Anderson & Associates, the youngest person to achieve that level in the firm's 40-year history. My salary increased to $230,000 annually, and I received equity stake in the firm. Success continued building on success, entirely independent of family support. Vanessa completed her jail sentence in early January, released after 5 days with probation conditions that included mandatory counseling and social media restrictions. She emerged to find her Instagram account had been hacked and deleted during her incarceration. Years of carefully curated content vanished. Her attempts to rebuild her following failed, the engagement never returning. People had moved on to other influencers who actually produced content rather than just documenting grievances. My parents' social situation continued deteriorating. My mother was asked to resign from 2 charity boards after her behavior toward me became common knowledge among Charlotte's philanthropic circles. Several board members had daughters or knew women with similar family estrangement stories, and they had no patience for Patricia Sterling's performance of wounded motherhood while ignoring her role in creating the situation. My father lost a consulting opportunity when the company's background research uncovered the lawsuit, and his attorneys sanctioning for frivolous litigation. February brought my 35th birthday, celebrated again at the Beach House with an even larger gathering. 70 people filled the property, the new office addition serving as a bar area, the deck crowded with colleagues and friends who had become my chosen family. Jennifer gave her annual toast, this one about the strength required to build a life entirely on your own terms and the courage to defend that life against people who claimed authority over it, simply through genetic connection. During the party, I received an email from my parents' attorney, a new one since Marcus Webb had apparently learned his lesson about representing the Sterlings. The email contained a formal offer. My parents would drop all contact attempts, respect all boundaries, and acknowledge my ownership of the beach property in exchange for a single family meeting mediated by a professional therapist. The offer was presented as generous, a final opportunity for healing and closure. I showed Jennifer the email, and we laughed at the audacity. "They still don't understand that you don't need closure from them," Jennifer observed. "They think you're missing something that only they can provide, when actually you have everything you need because you built it yourself." I drafted a response declining the offer and explaining that I had already achieved closure. It arrived when I accepted that they were incapable of the relationship I deserved and stopped wanting something they couldn't provide. The response clearly stated that I wanted no further contact through attorneys or otherwise, that all communication attempts were violations of the restraining order's spirit, if not its letter, and that continued harassment would result in additional legal action. I never received a reply, and the contact attempts finally, fully stopped. Silence replaced the constant boundary violations, and that silence felt like victory. Spring arrived with new growth, both literal and metaphorical. The beach house garden that I had planted the previous year bloomed with native coastal plants, a low-maintenance landscape that required minimal care and provided habitat for local wildlife. I spent weekends there reading on the deck, swimming in the still cold Atlantic, existing in a space that was completely, legally, permanently mine without any family claim or shadow. The Durham project won a Regional Sustainable Architecture Award in March, my first major professional recognition. The awards ceremony was attended by city officials, developers, and architecture professionals from across North Carolina. My parents were not invited and did not attend, though I learned later they saw coverage in the Charlotte newspaper. My chosen family filled a table, Jennifer and colleagues and friends who had supported my journey, celebrating an achievement that was entirely my own. Dr. Morrison's book won an award in April for nonfiction psychology writing, bringing renewed attention to the stories within it, including mine. She invited me to co-present at a psychology conference in Chicago, discussing the legal aspects of protecting yourself from family harassment. We stood before 200 therapists and social workers, sharing strategies that had worked, documentation systems that proved effective, the importance of treating family boundary violations as seriously as violations by strangers. Vanessa's probation ended in May without incident, but her life had contracted significantly. She still lived with our parents, still had no steady employment, still maintained a small social media presence that generated no income. From what I heard through distant connections, she had finally gotten a retail job at a department store, working part-time for minimum wage at age 29. The golden child my parents had lavished with money and opportunity had become exactly what they feared I would become, dependent and financially unstable. The irony was not lost on me. My parents settled into their reduced social standing, no longer prominent in Charlotte circles they had once dominated. My father accepted that his reputation was permanently affected by the lawsuit, his business ethics questioned by people who mattered in his world. My mother stopped hosting elaborate charity events, her guest lists shrinking as people tired of her victimhood narrative. They stayed together in the house that had been my childhood prison, growing older and smaller in their own bitterness. I spent my 36th birthday in June at the beach house, a quiet celebration with just my closest friends. The property had appreciated to $2.4 million, the office addition and general market trends increasing its value. I had no plans to sell, viewing it as both home and investment, the physical manifestation of success achieved through my own effort and defended through appropriate legal channels. Every time I walked through the door, I felt the satisfaction of ownership earned and protected. The firm offered me full partnership in July, a promotion that came with significant equity stake and seat on the leadership committee. At 36, I was the youngest full partner in firm history. My technical skills and business development ability setting me apart from architects who viewed the profession as purely creative rather than also commercial. I negotiated my partnership agreement personally, understanding contracts and leverage in ways my architecture training hadn't taught, but my family dysfunction had. Aunt Patricia visited again in August, our annual tradition of genuine family connection. She brought news that my mother had asked about me, wondering if I was happy, if my life had turned out well, if I ever thought about reconciliation. Patricia had been honest. Maya is thriving. She has a career she loves, friends who value her, and a life built entirely on her own terms. She thinks about you only when legally required to document harassment attempts. That's not cruelty, Eleanor. It's healing. I asked Patricia if she thought my mother understood, if somewhere beneath the narcissism and favoritism, there was genuine remorse. Patricia considered the question carefully. I think she regrets losing access to you, Maya. I don't think she regrets the actions that led to that loss. She still sees herself as the wronged party, the mother whose ungrateful daughter abandoned her over misunderstandings. She's incapable of the self-reflection required for genuine remorse. Fall arrived with the satisfaction of annual rituals established in my new life. Work projects that challenged and fulfilled me, weekends at the beach house that restored my energy, friendships that deepened through shared experience rather than genetic obligation, professional recognition that validated my choices. I was 36 years old, successful by any measure that mattered, and completely free from the family that had viewed my independence as betrayal. The 5-year anniversary of purchasing the beach house passed in October, marked by a small ceremony where I burned the final mortgage statement. The property was paid off completely, 4 years ahead of schedule. Aggressive payments made possible by my increasing salary and refusal to fund anyone's lifestyle but my own. $2.4 million in real estate, owned free and clear, the ultimate proof that success earned through effort meant more than anything given or stolen. I thought occasionally about my parents and sister, wondered if they had learned anything from the legal consequences and lost relationships, but mostly I didn't think about them at all. Having achieved the genuine closure that comes from accepting reality, rather than demanding change from people incapable of growth, they had shown me repeatedly who they were. I had finally, permanently believed them. Dr. Morrison contacted me in November with news that a documentary filmmaker wanted to create a film about family estrangement, featuring several stories from her book. I declined participation, having shared my story enough, ready to move from public advocacy back to private success. My role was never to be a professional estranged daughter, just someone who protected herself and then lived well, demonstrating that escape was possible and life after family could be full and meaningful. December brought holiday cards from friends and colleagues, genuine expressions of appreciation and connection. I sent none to my parents or sister, the restraining order making contact inappropriate and my own boundaries making it undesired. I volunteered again at the community kitchen on Thanksgiving, finding tradition in service rather than family obligation. Christmas was quiet, peaceful, exactly what I needed. The new year arrived with professional opportunities multiplying, personal satisfaction deepening, and the continued absence of family drama that had once consumed so much energy. I was 36 years old, thriving in career and life, surrounded by chosen family who valued me genuinely, protected by legal boundaries that enforced what my biological family had refused to respect, my autonomy and worth. The beach house stood on its foundation, weathering storms, appreciating in value, requiring maintenance but providing sanctuary. Much like me, it had been built carefully, purchased independently, defended fiercely, and existed now as proof that investment in yourself, protection of your boundaries, and refusal to accept mistreatment could result in something beautiful and permanent and entirely your own. I stood on the deck one January morning, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic, and felt the complete absence of regret. Some people spend their lives seeking approval from parents incapable of giving it, trying to earn love from siblings who view them as competition, accepting crumbs while others receive banquets. I had chosen differently, demanded better, protected myself legally when family refused to respect boundaries, and built a life that reflected my values rather than their dysfunction. The lawsuits were distant memories now, documented in court records but no longer emotional wounds. The estrangement was permanent, a conscious choice I reaffirmed daily through the peace and success it enabled. The family that had tried to steal my achievement had instead given me the final gift of clarity, showing me definitively that I owed them nothing, that their attempts at control were powerless against legal boundaries and personal resolve, that success defended was even sweeter than success earned. I inherited nothing from my parents except DNA, received nothing from them except criticism and neglect, owed them nothing except the truth that they were toxic and I was better off without them. The $2 million beach house they tried to claim for my sister stood as monument to that truth. Every square foot purchased with my money, every legal challenge defeated with my documentation, every sunset viewed from my deck proof that the best revenge is living well while refusing to share that life with people who never valued you properly. Some stories end with reconciliation and healing. Mine ended with legal victories, enforced boundaries, professional success, and the satisfaction of knowing that I had protected myself completely, built a life entirely on my own terms, and demonstrated that family of origin holds no power over adults who choose freedom over dysfunction. That was enough. That was everything.